Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to our niche cast on the 26th of October in the year of 2023. We're from the niche-case.com, and we are here to talk about Aotearoa sports. That's all we do. No bullkaka, apart from a bit of mindfulness. Like, there is a bit of bullkaka in the mindfulness, so shout out to the mindfulness. In fact, let's get our mindfulness done right here, right now. What do you got for mindfulness for this week's for this podcast?
Well, let me whip it up here because I dipped into. I mean, there could only be one source in this given week, and that is His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, Black Cap's #1 fan. So I searched Dalai Lama quotes and then grabbed the first one that took my fancy, which goes, "Silence is sometimes the best answer." So in that light, let's do a podcast.
Let's do a podcast full of silence because it is the best answer. I did like one of our, favorite mindfulness ideas is the chop wood, carry water, and I did hear a bit of a twist on that where it's like sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is chop wood, carry water. Like in those really mundane tasks and those things that you need to do on a daily basis, that is where you can find the most spirituality, the most enlightenment, because you're just being present in the moment and you're just doing what needs to be done. I'm not sure how that ties into the silence, but it does seem connected where it's like, by saying less, you can come across the greater spirituality. Like the silence can deliver you to enlightenment if you are present in that silence and you like take it for what it is. And I think there's something to that. Like a lot of the times we do look for the grandiose ideas, we do look for the magic, we do look for the clear reminders that there is magic in this world, that you like there is a God or whatever you want to believe in and however you want to believe it. But I think oftentimes we overlook that the most simple tasks can hold just as much, if not more, spirituality.
Yeah, I think that's a sort of a forest through the trees kind of idea, isn't it? Of like looking for the big miracles, um, and missing all the little ones that just take place in general, which is, or in fact, maybe it's the other way around, is looking for lots of miracles and missing the fact that all of it is just one big miracle. And even the little just your sort of standard everyday being of service kind of tasks had they do have a mindfulness, like a mindful quality to them, especially when they're repetitive. I don't know why, but something about repetitivity, or repetition. I think repetition is the real word there. Something about that makes is just, I don't know, just lends itself to that. I guess it's similar to the act of meditation, isn't it? Which is just like breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, and just do that 1,000 times without counting. It's I don't know. It's all a bit miraculous, isn't it? And you just got to step back and yeah, see that forest for all those individual trees, and
Med-
sometimes be silent to go back to the original one that we kind of replaced.
yeah, not a moment of silence for Steven Adams and his NBA season, but like more of a meditation silence. And meditation is one of the like fundamental practices that will take you deeper into spirituality, and that involves you doing nothing. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't get any more simple than meditation. So yeah, we're working through some things there. Nice work. We're from the Niche Case, the niche-case.com, where you can find a whole bunch of Aotearoa sporting yarns. The football stuff is live at the moment. We've got the Wellington Phoenix takeaways. We got National League recaps from last weekend. We got the big old flying Kiwis wrap, which is a weekly occurrence, as is most of these other things. We've also got all your Plunket Shield needs covered on the website. 2 yarns from the first round of Plunket Shield. That's great. And I'm working on a Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns versus Australia preview. And I'm going to be publishing today the third installment of the Kiwi-NRL Juniors who helped Australian teams win in 2023. And I just want to highlight some key trends that have popped up from the 2023 edition. For those who aren't aware, this involves me just looking at the grand finals of under 18 / under 19 and under 21s in New South Wales and Queensland, strictly about the teams who played in the grand finals for those competitions, and strictly about the Kiwi-NRL Juniors playing in those grand finals. There are some really interesting trends starting up in Townsville within the Cowboys system. Last year, Henry Tiutau and Jeremiah Matautia. Matautia is an Otara Junior, Tiutau is a Maris Saints Junior in Auckland. They played in the grand final of the Mal Meninga Cup, which I think was under 18s for Townsville last year. This year they played in the under 21s grand final for Townsville. And that's quite interesting because the Cowboys are really good at recruiting forwards from Aotearoa. Case in point, Griffin Neame. He's from Greymouth. The Cowboys also recruited Wiremu Greg from Northland, and then he moved down to the Eels. And there's I need to get this correct because it is a bit of a tricky name. In between Griffin Neame and Tiutau and Matautia, you've got Di Jazere Pua'avase, who's a Manurewa junior. He's kind of a step up from the two youngsters. He's playing Queensland Cup in the Cowboys system. I think it was mainly with Townsville this year. So the Cowboys, they love a middle forward from Aotearoa. And Tiutau and Matautia both played Queensland Cup this year as well. Then we go to Redcliffe. Redcliffe won the Mal Meninga Cup, which is the under 18 competition. And I do remember talking about this quite a bit at the time. You've got John Whinianga Nofo, who wasn't in the top 17 to start the season. Then he came onto the bench. By the end of the season, he was a starting half, scoring tries, kicking goals, doing everything for the Redcliffe Dolphins. He's from Auckland Grammar. He was playing first 15 at Auckland Grammar. And he is from, I actually wrote about this in the newsletter. Shout out to our newsletter, the newscase.substack.com, because there's so many like whānau connections in the Kiwis, Kiwi Ferns across various Aotearoa sporting matters. But the Whinianga Nofo whānau is quite interesting because Fehe played for the All Blacks Sevens, and he was playing for Bay of Plenty in the NPC competition this year. And I caught his games a few times, and he is obviously extremely powerful because all of the Whinianga Nofo boys are extremely powerful. Molino was playing for Western Clydesdales this year in Queensland Cup, and he earned a train and trial gig with the Bulldogs. Hold the Bulldogs thought. So you've got three Whinianga Nofo brothers, I believe, who all played first 15 for Auckland Grammar. Two of them are in NRL systems. One was an All Black Sevens player. So they're pretty good at footy. Shout out to them. Then we go down to New South Wales, and we had the Eels versus the Knights in the SG Ball under 19 competition. The Eels had Te Huranui Twiddle from Turanga Waiwai. He was starting fullback for the Eels in SG Ball. They won SG Ball. After SG Ball, Twiddle goes straight into fullback for Jersey Flegg under 21s. That seems like a good sign of his talent. And he's in the Eels system. And what do we know about the Eels Kiwi-NRL system? Players get better there. And if you look, Twiddle is having a similar impact with the Eels that Dylan Brown had. So that's a good indicator. And if you think about like Morgan Harper, not a whole lot of people are high on Morgan Harper right now, but what happens when Kiwi-NRL youngsters go to the Eels? They get a whole lot better. Maratinea Correa, Isaiah Papali'i, and so on. So look for improvements in Morgan Harper. But Te Huranui Twiddle is a very talented fullback in the Eels system from Turanga Waiwai. The Knights are very busy in Kiwi-NRL recruitment as well. And what's interesting is They've got a young wave at the moment to replace the older wave who have all left the Knights, like Stafford Toa, fantastic youngster in the Knights system. Now he's with the Tigers. You've also got Chris Viaila, who is from Waitemata. Knights recruited him. All the young grades going up in the Knights system. He made a mid-season switch to the Sharks. So the best Kiwi-NRL youngsters in the Knights system, they leave for other clubs, but they've got a whole nother wave coming through. You've got two of Leka Halasima's buddies from Southern Cross campus, Jerome Whalemoi and Elijah Leomawana. Leomawana played New South Wales Cup. He played SG Ball. He played Jersey Flegg. The Knights also had Jaden Harris from Kohu Kohu. So he might be a relation to James Fisher Harris. They've also got Te Puke is Bailey Carmichael, and another Te Puke youngster, Tama Kaimoana Whare Aorere. So the Knights have a lot of good talent from Aotearoa in their mixer. Let alone, like, they've got like Sebastian Sua and Temple Kalepo in their older grades as well. I've been pretty down on the Bulldogs for a while. And everyone loves the Bulldogs. Hold that thought as well. This is the initial hold the thought was about the Bulldogs, and I was about to bring up Josh Curran, but hold that thought as well.
You've come back to the first thought to replace it with another held thought, basically.
Yeah. The Bulldogs are extremely busy in recruiting from Aotearoa. They love Aotearoa. Phil Gould loves Aotearoa. And they do a lot of great recruitment of the young ladies from Aotearoa. But unfortunately, the Bulldogs don't have an NRL women's team, so those players just go play for other NRL women's teams. So the Bulldogs, they recruit a lot, but their lads don't really play. And that's led by Carl Olowapu. So I get, the reason I'm going deep into this is there's just so much interesting stuff here. Carl Olowapu, Bulldogs paid a transfer fee to get Olowapu to the Bulldogs from the Broncos. They paid a transfer fee for Olowapu to finish the season in under 21s. What's concerning there is that Olowapu now needs neck surgery. And apparently he had a neck injury all season, and he is likely to miss all of next season.
We're getting into some Memphis Grizzlies territory here.
Yeah, but Steven Adams wasn't playing. Olowapu was playing under 21s with a neck injury. Why are you playing under 21s with a neck injury? Why did the Bulldogs pay a transfer fee for Olowapu to then play under 21s with a neck injury? That's insane. Shout out Olowapu, Randwick Jr. from Wellington. Bit of a Randwick buzz at the moment. You've got Danny Levi in the Kiwis. Jacob Laban's a Randwick Jr. as well. Why are the Warriors letting go of Josh Curran? Well, I don't think Josh Curran's that good. A lot of people are overstating how good Josh Curran is. He's all right. But Jacob Laban's going to be better. Leka Halasima's going to be better. Kailani Going can be better. All those lads are cheaper. And the Bulldogs are going to sign Josh Curran if they haven't officially yet. Who gets better at the Bulldogs? I don't think Josh Curran's going to be turn into a superstar at the Bulldogs. I think Josh Curran was overrated. The perception of Josh Curran is far and above his actual production. So there's the Josh Curran thing. So the Bulldogs, they've got a lot of players. Unfortunately, someone like Sione Moala, who they recruited from the Raiders, he dropped out of the top 17 around the time when Olowapu was put into under 21. So that's unfortunate. The Bulldogs recruited Eric Va'afusuanga from the Warriors. He's played 7 games in 2 seasons. The Bulldogs signed Isaac Matalavea Booth from the Titans. Similar size and stature to Nelson Asafa Solomona. He played 2 games this season. You can read about it on our website, the niche-case.com, because the Bulldogs have a bunch of other players in that category as well who they signed. They're Kiwi-NRL Juniors, but they didn't really play. That's the weird thing about the Bulldogs. Credit to Whamai Tuilalo, who's an Otahuhu junior who did play for the Bulldogs all season. And that's really interesting when you compare it to the Roosters. So the Bulldogs did defeat the Roosters in the Jersey Flegg final, but I'm far more positive about the Roosters system. They've got Tavita Henare Schuster, who played, he's from Palmerston North, rugby union junior. Roosters signed him. He's a winger, centre in Jersey Flegg, plays a few games in New South Wales Cup. The Roosters also had Cassius Tia at halfback in their Jersey Flegg Grand Final. Salisi Fokete coming off the bench in their Jersey Flegg Grand Final. Benaya Iowelu was 18th man in the Jersey Flegg Grand Final. All three of those players played SG ball, Jersey Flegg, and they also played a game each of New South Wales Cup. What's interesting, those three lads, in each of their New South Wales Cup debuts, they all played over 70 minutes. So they're under 19 lads playing over 70 minutes in their New South Wales Cup debuts. You've also got Lafi Tuinavai, who is a Waitemata junior. He came off the bench for the Roosters in Jersey Flegg. And there's Matua Robinson, who's a very tall winger in the Roosters system as well, from New Plymouth or Gisborne off the top of my head. I need to make sure I confirm that for the yarn that will be published today. So the Bulldogs, they love Kiwi-NRL Juniors, but it's a very messy development pipeline situation. Roosters, they also love Kiwi-NRL Juniors, but the pipeline's clear. It's efficient, it's productive, and there is a clear pathway to the NRL. Of course, we've talked about it before, the Bulldogs did sign that partnership with Canterbury Rugby League. So shout out to them, getting all the talent from Canterbury. Well, the Warriors already have 4 or 5 dudes from the St. Thomas of Canterbury team that won the secondary schools competition this year. So anytime you hear about these partnerships, you need to understand they are not exclusive. Youngsters from Canterbury can still sign with any NRL club they want. So that's just a little taster there of the Kiwi-NRL Juniors who helped Australian teams win this year. You've got 8 teams, 4 grand finals, 8 teams. Only one of those teams did not have a Kiwi-NRL Junior. And Kiwi-NRL Juniors mean they played rugby league in Aotearoa for a grassroots club. These aren't dudes who were born in Australia and they have Kiwi heritage. These dudes all have an affiliated grassroots community club. 7 of the 8 teams had Kiwi-NRL Juniors. Most of them had at least 3. There's some good stuff happening in the younger grades there, and you can read about it on our website, theniche-case.com. You can also read about Women's Big Bash League in our newsletter via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. I'm following the Women's Big Bash League in our Monday and Friday newsletters. We've got Sophie Devine playing for the Perth Scorchers. We've got Susie Bates and Jess Kerr playing for the Sydney Sixers. Where Susie Bates, she's got 14 runs in 3 games with a strike rate of 48, average of 4.6. She's not scoring many runs at the moment, Susie Bates. Jess Kerr's got 2 wickets in 2 games. Amelia Kerr doesn't seem to have played for Brisbane Heat yet. So we'll keep track of that. And it sounds like you're going to be tracking you usually track the Kiwis in the NBL, which is another fascinating pocket considering the Breakers never play their New Zealand players. So screw the Breakers. Let's just celebrate all the Kiwis in the NBL. You can read about that in most of our newsletters every Monday and Friday. And you also love to put a spotlight on the Kiwis in the A-League. Do you have any like spotlight Kiwis in the A League you want to highlight right now that you will be writing about tomorrow in our newsletter?
Well, on the screw the breakers note, just quickly, starting five in their most recent game, not a single New Zealander in there. They've three Americans and two Australians. So yeah, like Delaney and Abercrombie sitting on the bench is in like both of them at the same time is not doesn't quite sit right. But those two and Isaiah Leafa do still get decent minutes at least. Uh, Kiwis in the A League, much more exciting. I've been buzzed on this one since the start because this is like coming off that World Cup where it just, the it was kind of laid clear, at least to me, and some of the stuff I was trying to write about how football ferns are a couple years away, and to be a couple years away, like they're just how do I put this? Like they just need more professional players, and the entry level for professional football at the moment for women's football is the A League. And we've got as many A League players playing for non-Wellington Phoenix teams as ever before in the women's competition. Men's competition, not so good. Like it's basically just the way you're talking about with some of the Aussie things, league stuff. It's like they're born in Australia or whatever, lived in Australia most of their lives, eligible for New Zealand types. So like Daningham and there was a fellow, Lockie Bayliss, who's also at Newcastle Jets. I don't know if he'll play, but he was called up for one of the New Zealand youth teams recently and had a bit of buzz about him. I think under 17s it might have been. He's been scoring goals at like a state level, sort of reserve team stuff. Don't know if he'll play first team. He's quite young, but meant to have a bit about him. And he's dual eligibility. And the fact that he got called up for a New Zealand team and then pulled out injured a little bit like a little bit concerning. So I don't know if that's a guy we can lock in quite yet. But who else is there? Like Zach Zoricic is a young guy at Central Coast. Storm Ruse at Central Coast, but not a lot else other than obviously the two Phoenix departures: Ollie Sale, Perth Glory, Clayton Lewis, MacArthur. Clayton Lewis got an assist in his A League debut for MacArthur, and Ollie Sale didn't have such a good game. I think Perth lost or they drew or something. I don't know. They didn't win. But the important thing is actually that they play the Wellington Phoenix this week. So we might swing back around and talk about that a little later. But the Women's A-League is where it's at. Because there you've got, Melbourne City might be the best team in the competition, captained by Rebecca Stott. Hannah Wilkinson is their number 9. Perth Glory have had quite a nice start with Grace Jale playing big minutes as a starter for them. Pretty sure she's going to have a massive season because she had a pretty big season last year for Canberra as one of the leading assist makers in the competition and got overshadowed a little bit because Canberra had a couple other stars, particularly like well-known Australian players, Michelle Heyman, for example. Like Grace Jale's impact didn't quite get noted as much as perhaps it could have. I think in Perth, she's a little bit more front and center. It's her third A-League club in 3 years, but I think this is the one that this is the one where she's going to get a bit more room to show what she can do. And she did score a brilliant goal in her first game there. Haven't seen Liz Anton yet. She's been a regular for Perth for a couple years. I'm assuming that just means she's injured. So hopefully she pops up at some point because she is under contract with Perth again. Newcastle Jets have got Rebecca Burrows, who came off the bench in the first game, started the second game. That's progress for you. Millie Clegg at Western Sydney Wanderers, obviously we haven't seen yet, but her birthday is in a couple of days. And I don't know if the A-League women's breaks for the international break or not. Because I believe that means, she won't be able to. Oh, no, where are we? Yeah, they do break for the international break. So there's no women's Phoenix this weekend. Meaning that when they come back in 10 days' time or whatever, Millie Clegg will have turned 18 and will be eligible to play for Western Sydney. So that's good to go. I did see someone asked in the it was one of the press conferences with I think it wasn't Paul Temple, it was the assistant Callum Holmes, I believe his name is, doing the press conference for the women's team ahead of the last game. And one of the journalists asked if they thought they missed the trick there with Millie Clegg. Did they not realize she wasn't 18 and couldn't play? Like, what kind of disaster is this? I'm like, she's missing 2 games. And then she's good to go after that. Like, you sign a player if they might miss the first 2 games, but you think they're a good player. Who cares if they miss the first 2 games? I don't understand why that could be some kind of drama. But anyway, she'll be good to go in a second. Where else? We got two others. Adelaide United, where Hannah Blake in the first game against Canberra, I thought was as good an individual performance as I've seen from a Kiwi for an Aussie club, maybe ever. But more specifically for an attacking player, where she like I think she scored a goal. She set up one. She won a penalty. She scored a goal. Yeah, she did score a goal. She scored an absolute banger that looked exactly like Grace Jarley's goal. Won a penalty, set up a late equalizer, I think it was. Hit the post another time. Like, absolutely brilliant game. They were just everything was going through her as an attacking midfielder. Um, Not as influential in the second game, but still pretty good. And then I found out since then that Rosetta Taylor as well, who's been starting for them, is actually born in New Zealand. And she was born in New Zealand. I think she grew up a bit in Australia and then she moved to Spain and then has been living in England for the last few years. She's only about like 22 or something. So she's lived in a few different countries, but she hasn't played for New Zealand at any age level, but she was in an under 20s ID camp a couple years ago. And she is in that age grade as well, where like there was one wave where there was a 17s and 20s that got cancelled because of the COVID stuff. She would have been in that under 20s range. So it might also be that she just didn't get a chance to play under 20s. But I'm counting her as a Kiwi until she says otherwise, given she was born here and has been to a New Zealand ID camp, which is, she hasn't done that for Australia, hasn't done that for, well, I don't think she's eligible for Spain or England. She just lived there for a while. Her and Blake have both started both games for Adelaide. So there's a double banger there, waiting on the double banger from Anton and Jale at Perth. We've got the double banger of Stott and Wilkinson at Man City, and there's a double banger at Canberra United, Ruby Nathan and Devin Jackson, couple National League superstars from last season, where Nathan, well, both of them have played in both games. Nathan came off the bench in the first game and played as like a striker. In the second game, she got promoted to start and was sort of looked like maybe wingback stuff, but then also definitely by the end of the game, she'd been moved up to as like a proper winger. I don't know if they changed formation or if I just misread it. I wasn't paying full attention to that game. I was sort of tuning in and out, but she's like, well, she's about a week older than or 2 weeks older than Millie Clegg. So she's only just old enough to be playing. So she's just turned 18, already started a game for Canberra United. That seems like a big deal. And Devin Jackson, a few years older, has one cap for the Football Ferns. She's come off the bench in both games. Curiously playing midfield rather than a more attacking role. I would have thought she'd be a bit more suited for, but you know, you get them where you fit in. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 New Zealanders on the books of Australian clubs, not even counting in the vast arrays at the Wellington Phoenix. And so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them have started a game and 8 of them have played. Just waiting on Clegg and Anton to pop up and complete the take us into double figures, but I'm sure that'll happen sooner rather than later, probably in 2 weeks' time after the international break, which the Football Ferns aren't involved in. They don't have a game for some reason. I didn't even know there was an international break coming up because the Football Ferns didn't have games. And then I'm writing Flying Kiwis being like, when's the next game for, say, like, I think Indy Riley was the first woman who popped up on the thing. Why is it not till November? Okay, there's an international break. Why don't the Football Ferns have games? Okay, they don't. Whatever, they just don't. Sometimes we just got to cop that, I guess. But, you know, keep the A-League players fresh. Here we go. Boosting out those stocks for the next time the Ferns are in action.
Sure, you can read about that tomorrow in our Substack newsletter, so sign up. And if you do sign up to the newsletter, which is completely free and available to you every Monday and Friday, full of niche case Kiwi sporting information, paid Substack subscribers can also access our subscriber podcast, which is also available for the Patreon whānau via Patreon. So those are 2 easy ways for you to support the niche case directly. If you appreciate our mahi, you can donate and generously support the niche case through either platform. Doesn't matter to us, whatever's easiest for you. And you can access our subscriber podcast. Yesterday we recorded our subscriber podcast and we offered some Chris Wood goal scoring information with Nottingham Forest, and we also chatted a bit about the Black Caps at the World Cup. So that's like a little VIP section for all the generous folks who support us. Nico the Wildcard. Did you have any like leftover cricketing thoughts, World Cup thoughts, Black Caps thoughts from that korero yesterday in the subscriber podcast?
No, I don't think so. At least nothing I can think of at the top of my head.
Well, yeah, and it's like we are in a little down patch at the World Cup because the Black Caps don't play till Saturday. Big game against Australia. Australia did smoke the Netherlands, so obviously the Black Caps are going to destroy Australia on the same day. The Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns. The Kiwis are going to get their first win over Australia before getting the second win the next week. The Kiwi Ferns, they're going to get their win against Australia, having been defeated by Australia a couple weeks ago. The Kiwis have the same team, except for Kieran Foran is officially named at starting hooker, with Fa'amanu Brown coming off the bench. And the Aussies, they've got a slightly weaker team. It looks like they are eyeing up the final. So the Kiwis, there's a high chance the Kiwis can win this, and then we'll see what happens in the final back in Hamilton, which will be. I'm pretty excited for that game in Hamilton. Just considering how the regions of Aotearoa supported rugby league this year, there was a. I've been watching the Māori All Stars haka in Rotorua earlier this year a few times. Kind of because I love it. Like it's just, I think it's one of my favorite hakas ever. And there is a theme or a trend, or no, it's a new thing. Sorry, with Joseph Tapine and James Fisher Harris emerging as the pure leaders of Aotearoa Rugby League. Because previous Kiwis teams, previous Māori All Stars teams, they did have a lot of veterans like Jesse Bromwich and Peter Hiku were in the World Cup team last year. Like the All Stars have always had a few veterans, but then you go to the Māori All Stars haka in Rotorua earlier this year. It's only really Jordan Rapana who is an elder statesman. Then you've got Tapine and Fisher Harris as the leaders. Who's leading the Aotearoa Kiwis haka? It's Joseph Tapine and Fisher Harris. Although it's also Leo Thompson, because Leo Thompson was front and center of that Māori All Stars haka. And then he was, I'm not sure of the intricacies of who's leading, because you have like Fisher Harris and Tapine leading in some capacity. Obviously, half Pākehā, half Palangi here, just doing my best to understand what's happening. But Leo Thompson's the dude doing a lot of the leading of the haka. That is to say, that crowd in Rotorua was massive, like jam-packed, standing room only. And that's why I love that haka, because the Māori All-Stars are performing the haka on their land against the Indigenous in front of a massive crowd. We've had NRL games in Napier, in Hamilton, an NRL trial game in Christchurch. There was an NRL game Warriors played in Wellington as well. So I'm pretty fizzed up for that game in Hamilton, which will be against Australia in a couple of weeks. But I do think the Kiwis can give it a good crack against Australia here. I did find it interesting that Nofahu White was the 18th man. So he was in the haka against Samoa, and he was there in case like a head knock injury or something like that. He was part of that squad where Danny Levi, Wiremu Greg, and Keanu Kinney played in the A game against Tonga A. And I think that's a good, indicator of Nofahu White's talent. Again, who does he play for? What system did he come through? The Roosters. And I don't think a lot of people...
Bulldogs.
Definitely not the Bulldogs. Is there any Bulldogs player in this Kiwis team? No. Because...
A couple ex-Bulldogs players.
Well, Fa'amanu Brown left the Bulldogs mid-season. Great sign of the Bulldogs culture right there. Lol. Nofahu White, like not a lot of people, I don't think people really knew who Nofahu White was, but he won awards in the Roosters system. He was playing ahead of Siwa Wong this year. Now he's right on the edge of the Kiwis squad, and I was really impressed with the bench impact of Griffin Neem, Leo Thompson, Asafa Solomona, and Fa'amanu Brown. So it'll be good to see them punch off the bench against Australia. I did note as well, a lot of that Chance Nickel Clockstar stuff happened on the right edge, which is the same shape we saw for the Warriors. So you can, shout out Dallin Watene-Zalesniak for his season and his tries. But Jermaine Usako put in a similar performance outside Chance Nickel Clockstar on that right edge for the Kiwis. So I think it's kind of more about the shape. It's more about the system than it is any individual. I noted Leo Thompson's mana. He's had a fantastic year. Dylan Brown is suited to test footy, I reckon, and that's going to be tested against Australia. What does Dylan Brown do best? Running and tackling. What do you need to do well in test footy? Run the ball, tackle the opposition. I think this level of footy is suited to Dylan Brown, or Dylan Brown is suited to test footy. And I just like what the Kiwis are doing. Threats on both sides of the field, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens against Australia.
Yeah, funky old game there, because on the one hand, it doesn't matter because it's like both these teams, because Samoa's already lost both their games and don't play again. We know what the final of this little tri-series is going to be, and it's these two teams meeting again. But that also makes it quite funky. And then when you're the Kiwis who don't get a lot of wins against Australia, you don't waste those opportunities when they come along. At the same time as well, or at least on the same day, on the same night, there's also the play caps against Australia, isn't it? Which is the same thing, where it's a group stage game. So you want to win. There's a lot on the line if you do win, but there's nothing particularly on the line if you lose. Like you get another opportunity potentially. It's not going to stop either of those teams making the knockouts of the Cricket World Cup, just as it won't stop these. Well, other results might stop them in that case, but it's certainly not going to stop the Kiwis or them Aussies from making the final, because that's already guaranteed. Funky little trans-Tasman opportunities coming up on Saturday night, coming after the All Whites couldn't get it done against the Socceroos recently, but maybe we can make it 2 out of 3. Best 2 out of 3.
Well, the Kiwi Ferns are also playing Australia, and I think
3 out of 4.
I think all three, so Black Caps, Kiwis, Kiwi Ferns, these are all winnable games against Australia. Australia is beatable in all three sports, in all three teams, in all three games. The Kiwi
Definitely
Ferns,
a lot more than they were for the All Whites, for example.
Yes, correct. The Kiwi Ferns do have some interesting changes, because during the NRLW season, I was curious how all these centres fit into the same team. Well, 4 out of the 5 outside backs are all centres.
So there you go. There's your
so
answer.
The Kiwi Ferns, and then you've got Anessa Biddle at edge forward. So by putting Anessa Biddle at edge forward, then you can have a backline of Leanne Tufunga and Shanice Parker on the wings, with Mele Hufunga and Abigail Roach at centre. Tufunga, Hufunga, Roach, Parker, Biddle, they all played centre in NRLW. But to get them all into this Kiwis team without actually weakening the team, because when you do play players out of position, you can weaken the team. But I think the Kiwi Ferns are stronger by having Anessa Biddle on an edge, and Abigail Roach has commanded selection at centre. She's so good. But Shanice Park is also really good. Mele Hufunga is obviously really good as well. So I think it's a really talented Kiwi Ferns team. And the other change is Ash Quinlan coming on as a bench utility. So she will probably share dummy half with Brooke Anderson. Brooke Anderson is really strong defensively. She's got a good passing game. So if you've got Brooke Anderson and Georgia Hale defending in the middle, I think that's a good combo. And I think the Kiwi Ferns are really good. I think the Australia women are beatable. I'm excited for the Saturday of Trans-Tasman sport. Are the Phoenix also playing on Saturday? Is that what we're...
Yeah, I think they are, actually. I think they're on Saturday too at 5:30.
So
Let me just check because they're playing at home. Is it home against Perth Glory? Must be at
yes,
home if it's not late. Um, yeah, 5:30 on Saturday evening. Wellington Phoenix versus Perth Glory, the Ollie Sale Derby.
the Ollie Sale derby, but we're happy to have Alex Paulson. So you got Wellington Phoenix kicking off just before the Black Caps start, bit of overlap
Hmm.
there. Kiwi Ferns and Kiwis are obviously on Aussie time, so they will be a bit later. But you might get Kiwi Ferns, I think it's 7 p.m. kickoff New Zealand time. So, my oh my, this is going to be a fun Saturday. How did, what's your scout on Perth Glory? Phoenix had a 0-0 win against the Wanderers. Is this a winnable game for the Phoenix, or are we kind of slow building early in the season?
Did you say a nil win? Because
Yeah,
I like that idea.
I
It
put the
was a
positive twist on it.
yeah.
That was purely by accident. I'm fizzed up for the podcast. I'm just spinning big yarns and slip of the tongue every so often. But upon reflection, I think it was a 0 win for the Phoenix.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. It was a game where I think a lot of people didn't know what to expect from the Phoenix going into the start of a new season where they've just gone full on development mode and all the kids are out there and the veterans didn't quite get it all done last year. So there was a bit of a concern about not having to stocked up from outside of the club. And from that game, we talked about it a little bit the other day, and I've written about it. Like the attacking wise, we didn't learn a lot. I do think there's more sort of I was going to say wrinkles to be unfolded. I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it. I think maybe you want to fold up the wrinkles and create more wrinkles. I don't know, but there's more to come from the Wellington Phoenix in an attacking sense. I think they are a team under a new coach, a lot of new players, at least a lot of young players still learning stuff. Um, with a different system to what they played under Talai and what they've been used to for the last few years as well. So I think it's like let's give them some time to figure stuff out. I don't think they're going to ever get to a point this season where they're a great attacking team. They're not going to be one of the highest scoring teams, but that's why the nil was so important because it showed away from home they in some brutal conditions, like real hot. Drinks breaks in both those games for the first game of a summer season, so it might get worse. I don't know. There's going to be some nasty conditions along the way, but the Phoenix actually, I thought fitness wise, held up better than Western Sydney did, who had to sub off a couple of their best players along the way. Due to it had been the most dangerous and um yeah, like nothing wrong with a nil draw away from home at any point against a team that seems relatively evenly matched. At least in the stats, it was fairly evenly matched. Clean sheet is the most important thing. Like I said the other day in the podcast, it's like this is this just isn't a team that's going to be able to outscore teams 4-3 in any kind of consistent basis. If they want to be competitive, they have to be good defensively. And so to get such a strong defensive performance straight up from being led by two guys who have been fringe players stepping up into first 11 roles now, and Alex Paulson and Finn Sermon, who I thought both had spectacular games. That's pretty encouraging. And that element of it is way more encouraging than any discouragement about the fact that they didn't create very many chances. So happy with that. Happy with the nil win to start the season. Perth Glory in round one played Newcastle Jets at home. They scored in the second minute, then conceded, and then ended up drawing 2-2 against the Jets. And I'm going to call this one a 2-2 loss because it was a 92nd minute equalizer that they allowed. So they're equal on points, but the Phoenix had a 0 win and the Glory had a 2-2 loss. Ollie Sale wasn't goal for that though. Haven't seen the goals, so I don't know if there were any blunders or if it's just one of them. More often than not, there's nothing a goalie can do about the goals they concede. The damage has been done defensively in front of them, but I haven't caught the highlights of that one, so I can't speak.
It is.
I'll be silent on that, like the Dalai Lama said.
There you go. I'm also not going to be silent about curiosity at Ollie Sale's performance. I think there's some. We've talked about it, but I think there's some weaknesses there that the Wellington Phoenix could target. But that is all from our Tuesday podcast that you can go back and listen to get all the recap from last weekend's action. Obviously, fascinated to see how the Wellington Phoenix go. And if you did listen to that Tuesday podcast, you will know about Finn Sermon and Kelly Heald. Is that still correct?
Yeah, Lucas Kelly-Hield, left back.
Lucas, the Kyle Jamison of Wellington Phoenix football. So shout out to him, fascinating, talented youngster in the Wellington Phoenix system. National League football trucks along, and I'm just going to throw a couple of interesting matchups here for you. So the Women's National League, you've got Auckland United versus Southern United, top of the table clash. They have 4 wins and 1 loss each. Another team, Eastern Suburbs, also has that record, but they're facing the Central Football Federation, who are near the bottom of the ladder. So Eastern Suburbs should get that win, while Auckland United and Southern United play a top of the table clash. And then in the men's competition, bit of an Auckland derby. Auckland City versus Auckland United. City are first on 5-0. United are fourth with 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. So that's the most interesting game from my uneducated perspective. And you also got a little Wellington derby there with Wellington Olympic versus Petone. Start with the woman, Auckland United versus Southern United. What's going on here?
Massive game that could potentially be a preview of the grand final to come. It might also be effectively a semi-final because I think Eastern Suburbs aren't going anywhere. They had a bad loss last week, but they were short a few players in that game as well, and they have the potential to bring players back and step up a few levels. Western Springs have just done that. They've just brought back a few players. Arisa Takeda and Rena Harano after losing to Southern United a couple of weeks ago. And they're the team that smoked Eastern Suburbs. They're in good form. They look like a team that can really kick on. Those drop points against Southern, and also there was a draw against Wellington Phoenix. Those are frisky ones. Like, you can get away with one of those results. 2 of them might be something you find you regret towards the end of the season because it leaves you basically having to win the rest of the games. If you want to make top 2, but that's what a team like Western Springs, who are Kate Shepherd Cup champs, should be aiming for. Eastern Suburbs, defending National League champions, they should be aiming for getting back in the grand final. Auckland United, they're the Northern League champions from this year, or the NRFL Prem. They should be aiming for, they finished ahead of Suburbs and Springs during the league season. They should be aiming for more. Teams are a little bit different. I think Auckland United might not be quite as strong as they were before because they actually had, obviously Ruby Nathan was an Auckland United player before she went to Canberra United, but they also, during the A-League off-season, got Chloe Knott and Marissa Vandermeer to go play for them. So obviously they're no longer there, and obviously those are 2 extremely good players who are going to help you be a good football team. With Southern United, out of nothing, did not expect. I actually thought they might be worse than they have been, which is sort of solid mid-table, really good defensively, but don't score a lot of goals, but tough to beat under any circumstance. That's the kind of team they've been for a few years. They did have 1 year where things aligned nicely for them, and they won that South Central Series season, but that was also there were no Auckland teams involved that year. So the Auckland teams tend to set the tone. There were 2 Auckland teams in the grand final last year. Southern lost a few players, but then their recruitment was so good. Kendra Smith in midfield has been brilliant. Marissa Porteous in centre defence has been brilliant. Those 2 players, as well as there's another one. I think it's Shania McIntosh. I can't remember. She's playing mostly off the bench. So she's not as prominent for them. But the 3 of them came over from West Coast Rangers, who were the 5th place team in the Auckland Northern competition. So 4th, top 4 gets National League. They were 5th. They missed out on the last day. Ellerslie pipped them at the post. And so a couple of their players went and played for Southern United and have really taken Southern to a new level. But it's not just them. You've also got Tony Powers been brilliant for them. Hannah Mackay-Wright's always brilliant for them. Amy Simmers is having a bounce back year in goal. She's been very good. Freya Partridge-Moore coming off a strong season last year, repeating the dose. And they've got Amy Hislop back, from college in the States, and she's been absolutely fantastic as a hold-up striker, throwing in step-overs and turns and tricks and all this, as well as being strong and hard to push up and scoring goals. And she's been fantastic for them. And Southern just looked like don't forget about Abby Rankin as well, who's one of the most underrated players in the competition. Has been for a few years, playing a little bit further up the field this last couple of games since they changed their formation. Just as effective as an attacking midfielder as she was as a sort of box-to-box central midfielder. Southern's been fantastic. I loved watching what they've done and how good they've gotten. But this is a big test for them because Auckland United are defensively fantastic. They don't get broken down easy. A little bit wasteful in attack, which is their Achilles heel, is that they create a lot of chances, but they don't necessarily put them away. They only won 1-0 last week. And they've had a couple of games like that where it's felt like they could have gone out of sight and didn't. So in the way that, for example, Eastern Suburbs and Western Springs probably, like Springs have had a couple of games where they have put themselves out of sight and been more comfortable. Suburbs, I kind of expect that for them against Central on the weekend, but that's a big game. Those Suburbs and Springs aren't going anywhere. Only 2 teams make the grand final. Any points dropped, massive. And that also applies to that Auckland United, Auckland City game you're talking about in the men's competition, because Auckland City, they're in a good place. They've been winning all their games. Auckland United are coming off a 3-1 loss against Wellington Olympic, and they can't afford to lose to Auckland City as well. If that happens, their grand final dreams is done. Like they're not going to make top 2 if they lose back-to-back against teams around them in that area. But nobody's beaten Auckland City this year. So except for Western Springs in the Chatham Cup did knock them out. But that's the only loss they've had in any competition. They won their Oceania qualifiers. They won the Oceania Champions League itself. They went undefeated winning the Northern League. They've won all 5 games in the National League so far. It's just Auckland City not even looking that good in these National League games, but they just grind out wins because they've got so much depth and so much talent, and they're such a strong, organized team. And Auckland United have to find a way to beat them. So massive, massive weekend for the footballing club of Auckland United.
For those not quite tuned in, can you just give us a brief explainer of what Auckland United is? Because casual football fans, they might have heard of Auckland City. They might have heard of Wellington Olympic. And yes, there are some other quirky clubs, but Auckland United is definitely a newer entity in the Kiwi footballing landscape. And they seem to have pretty good men's and women's teams. They're first in the first on goal difference in the women's competition, competing for finals football in the men's competition. Who are they?
Yeah, this is one of those what do you call them? Amalgamation clubs that you got. When they started changing the National League back to club-based things, the writing was on the wall. And so a lot of these clubs started merging to be stronger. And this was one of those examples, probably the best example in terms of the success that they've had following from it. So Auckland United is a merger between Three Kings United, which has always been one of the, as far as Auckland football goes across all levels, juniors in particular, one of the biggest clubs in terms of number of teams, participants, members, whatever. Three Kings has always been huge. And Onehunga Sports, I think, was the other club that merged with them. And they're, not as big, but have had a successful first team. I remember them winning the Chatham Cup not that long ago. So it's when you get those mergers going, sometimes it's just convenient. It's 2 clubs that might operate better as one club geographically and sharing resources. Other times it's just 2 big clubs that decide to become a super club, and Auckland United is a bit of a super club, but you kind of have to be a super club if you want to compete with Auckland City. And I'll say this for Auckland United, who based at what's it called, Keithay Park, which is where the football Ferns, which is what the football Ferns chose as their home base during the World Cup. So nice little means also got upgrades there, flash new club rooms at Keithay Park there. They are the only team. So not the only team this year, because Eastern Suburbs this year have also qualified for both men's and women's National League. Auckland United are the only team who've done it both years. They did it last year as well, men's and women's National League. They're back men's and women's National League this year. Only team to do that.
Is that a junior club as well? Youngsters are playing for Auckland United, or are they playing for...
I don't know. I'm actually not sure. I think I don't know. I would assume so, but I'm not tuned into the Auckland Juniors scene anymore. I've
That's
left
right.
that one. So yeah, I don't know. I might ask around and find that out because that would be interesting to know if they still have like because some of them do that. Like some of the merger clubs still have their like even Auckland City, for example, whose spot they took Central's spot in in the Northern League, but they don't actually have anything other than City first team and reserve team. All the junior teams are just still Central football. So I don't know. Some do the merger where it's just the whole way down. Others just only do it at the top.
Sure, someone will let us know. So if you do know the ins and outs of Auckland Junior football, hit us up. We, yeah, we'll be interested. We'll be interested to know. Um,
Yeah.
let's finish with a bit of Plunket Shield cricket. Plunket Shield round 2 starts this Saturday. Canterbury host Otago, South Island matchup. Central host Wellington in Nelson. And then you've got the Auckland Aces hosting Northern Districts. Did have a little giggle at the Auckland Aces home record at Eden Park. So it will be interesting to see what happens against Northern because Northern had a big win over Otago and Hamilton. So Auckland lost to Central at Eden Park. Will they lose to Northern at Eden Park? Because if they do, it's going to tell you a bit about the state of Auckland cricket, to be honest. Like, I'm not that high on Auckland cricket. Their women aren't as good as other teams, straight up, and the men struggle in their home conditions. We'll be able to see what happens there. Northern, as noted on the Tuesday podcast, wrapping up these games. Sandeep Patel was a great performer. So him and Joe Carter scored the most runs for Northern. That will be a little area of focus. And they do have the K Clarks as well, which is another area of my focus. Wellington versus Central. 2 winners from last round. Central had a win over Auckland. Wellington had a win over Canterbury. So that will be an interesting matchup. Obviously, Central stacked with veterans. Wellington do skew a bit younger. And the Canterbury team, Canterbury and Otago both had losses last round. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I would expect a stronger Canterbury team to face Otago. Otago are full of young talent. Does make it hard to win. You do need some veteran performers. Even Wellington, like they had a lot of Nathan Smith and a lot of Ben Sears. 2 young but semi-experienced domestic cricketers. Otago's team is just full of young players, especially with the departures of Michael Ray and Michael Rippon to Canterbury. So it's the battle of the Michaels. It's the South Island Michael Derby. You got 2 Michaels leaving Otago to play for Canterbury. 2 South Island teams, 2 teams coming off a loss. Ooh, it's going to be interesting.
The South Island Michael Derby. I was just writing down South Island Michaels so that I can remember to put that in the episode title because that's a crack at that one. Did they play last week? Rippon and Ray.
Yes, Rippon. They both took a few wickets. Michael
Oh,
Ray got 3 wickets in that game. Rippon took 2 wickets. I think Rippon might have scored some runs as well because not many Canterbury batters scored many runs. Shout out Michael Rippon. Full name, Michael James Grattan Rippon. He scored 31 and a duck. So he did score a few runs, not enough runs to help Canterbury, but he was all right for the Cantabs.
Interesting. So who are your sort of round 1 standouts? Like not necessarily the best players, but like the players who popped off the scorecards and off the highlights being like, oh, that dude's doing something kind of thing.
I'll throw these up to repeat myself.
Nothing wrong with a bit of repetition. Chop wood, carry water.
because Zach Fox is like exceptional at cricket. So is Muhammad Abbas. There's a bit of uncertainty around Muhammad Abbas if it's M-O Muhammad or M-U Muhammad. I've seen two different spellings of Muhammad, but Muhammad Abbas is really, really good at cricket. And he's a lefty as well. So that, like, I do want to put those two in bright, shining lights. Like, they are so talented as cricketers. And this goes, again, as we mentioned on Tuesday, the talent of these youngsters is neck level. Both really good bowlers, both really good batters, both really good cricketers. But Abbas is a lefty seamer. And there is this kind of insecurity about, like, who's the next Trent Bolt? Who's the lefty? We need a lefty. Well, we've seen Ben Lister emerge for the Black Caps. Ray Toole took a few wickets for Central. He's a lefty as well. And then you've got Muhammad Abbas as a lefty seamer. So if we're talking about just skill sets, if we're talking about the cricketing package, Muhammad Abbas, good batter, lefty seamer, doesn't get any better than that. If your all-rounders bowling lefty, that's pretty interesting, I reckon. So I did enjoy that. And apart from that, it's like Sandeep Patel's an interesting one. Because Sandeep Patel's been on the scene for a while. But he hasn't been able to crack the Northern Districts team. And that is no shame. Like, at the moment, if you're not cracking the Central team, if you're not cracking the Northern team, it's all good. Because those teams are really good. And they have, like, settled groups of 13, 14 cricketers. Even Canterbury, they've got a few more ins and outs to their team where there are opportunities for youngsters. But there's less opportunities in Central and Northern because they've just got a really solid, well, they have really solid groups of domestic cricketers. They do have Black Caps, but there's a group of really solid domestic cricketers who are always available. So that limits the opportunities for young players. So someone like Sandeep Patel, he was selected for round 1 of Plunket Shield. He scored a century in round 1. But he's been on the scene for a while. He scored 69 against the touring Sri Lankan team this time in 2018. A year later, he scored 56 not out against the touring England team, so that's late 2019. So those were for New Zealand 11s, like New Zealand kind of barbarian type of teams. But he went 50 plus in both those games. But that was a few years ago. And his century came in his second Plunket Shield game. So that's an interesting journey for Sandeep Patel. Because he was a New Zealand under-19 cricketer. He was a really talented youngster who has just had to cook a little bit longer for his opportunity in Northern. What happens when he gets his opportunity round 1 for this season? Scores 145. And the highlights are quite interesting because there are a lot of chances in that highlights package of his knock. But that's no fault of Sandeep Patel. Like, if you don't take your catches, if you don't take your opportunities, it's up to the batter to make you pay. And Sandeep Patel made Otago pay in that game. So I think Sandeep Patel's a pretty interesting lad, considering he is a youngster who scored runs, and it was like him. I'm not sure where Tim Seifert's at right now. Like, he might be as part of the World Cup cover with the Black Caps. Who knows? We don't really know about that fringe Black Caps World Cup-y squad situation. But Pomari was the wicketkeeper for Northern Districts, and he's another good young cricketer. So there's a lot of young talent around Aotearoa. Much of it did perform in the first round.
Yeah, the thing that struck me when you're talking about some of those players just having to wait their turn to get into those better, more settled teams was like the recollection about how in Auckland those players leave, go do really well for another team, and then Auckland just re-signs them because they had who'd they have this week? Finn Allen was batting at like 7 in there, and Cam Fletcher was wicketkeeper. So there's two dudes who are from Auckland originally, left, broke through at different teams, played internationally, breaking through at different teams, just like Kyle Jamieson did before them, and then are signed back to Auckland. And then also, I don't know that they actually did that much in that game. That Auckland team's quite interesting. I wouldn't. We probably don't have a whole lot of time to talk about that at the moment, but like, there's a lot of pressure on Ashok to take wickets if they're going to be good. But also, Simon Keane's an interesting dude, isn't he? Because I was just looking at his stats because he averaged less than 15 2 seasons ago with the ball, bursting onto the scene and just taking wickets. Last year, he averaged a shade under 50 with the ball, so he didn't quite repeat it. Young bowler who obviously has plenty of time to like bounce back and settle. But he also scored 100 in the last Plunket Shield game of last season. So he actually his batting average and bowling average in his first season of Plunket Shield, 15 with the ball and a shade under 50 with the bat. Second season, averaged 50 with the bat and about no wait, the other way around. He went from 15 to 50 and then swapped around the other one. I've confused myself trying to figure that out. Now it's the third season, which is where maybe you start to level out and find that middle ground. But he seems like a dude who clearly has a fair bit of talent, and if Auckland's going to do well, probably requires him to be quite good.
He didn't take any wickets on his home deck.
And he didn't take any wickets on the weekend.
Against Central. That's like, I don't know, like Auckland have some talent. Like Ashok's the next up young spinner. Ben Lister's the next up lefty. You got Finn Allen, hugely talented cricketer. You know, he's from Auckland. He spent a couple of years in Wellington, but he's from Auckland. I don't think Auckland has the best young talent, though. And I am not that high on Auckland as a cricketing production pipeline. I think considering who they are in the cricketing landscape, I think it's quite underwhelming, the talent that comes out of Auckland, men's and women's. Again, Fran Jonas is from Auckland. Molly Penfold's from Auckland. But I don't think there are like superstars of the White Ferns. Like, they're just like trying to compete for White Ferns selection. Whereas you look at there's a bit of talent there. You know, Simon Keane did have a good debut season, but he's had a massive diminishing returns over the last 2 seasons. The talent is kind of there for Auckland. But they don't have a Zach Foulkes. They don't have a Muhammad Abbas. They don't have a Ben Sears. They don't have a Reese Madiu. They don't have a Mitch Hay. Like, even if Auckland kept Dale Phillips, Glenn Phillips, like, they would be, like, Auckland would be better with Dale Phillips in their team, I reckon. But he's with Otago.
Don't worry, they'll re-sign him if he goes good at Otago. They'll bring him back in 3 years.
Like, Auckland has good talent, but they don't have the supreme talent. Like, so Canterbury seam attack that I talk a lot about, Kyle Jamieson, Will O'Rourke, they're both from Auckland. But Kyle Jamieson's gone back to Canterbury. Will O'Rourke made his debut for Canterbury, and they are joined by Henry Shipley. Those are like the, you know, best seam bowling prospects in Aotearoa, who, as we always say, have a bit of funk, a bit of X factor. 2 of them are from Auckland, but don't play for Auckland. One of them's just a pure Cantab. Who's the fastest bowler in New Zealand? It's probably Ben Sears. Who does he play for? Wellington. Who are the next up Black Caps? Who are the best A cricket performers? It's Scott Kugelheim, it's Tom Bruce. They don't play for Auckland. we're from Auckland, but we also, keep it real about Auckland. So big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, enjoy all the Aotearoa sporting action. Chur chur.